Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy, and host of the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, wait, what, you thought I wasn't going to come back? Of course I'm going to come back. We were just on a bit of an extended hiatus. Today's episode 50, mail theft and the Postal Police, whoop, whoop, with Frank Albergo when we come back. All right, so we are back to the Brett Johnson Show. Did I say back? Yeah, I said back. My listeners out there, they probably know, hey, Brett, you've not put out a show in a few months. A few months is putting it lightly. The last episode 49, A CISO's Guide to Federal Prison, that was October 18th of 2022. We are right now about to enter into March of 23. So my apologies for the extended hiatus. You are absolutely owed various reasons, tons of excuses, and I'll get to those, but today is not the show to do that. We'll do that on the next episode. Today's episode 50, is mail theft and the Postal Police with Frank Albergo. Mr. Albergo is the national president of the Postal Police Officers Association. He is no joke. He knows what he's talking about. He's coming on. We're going to talk about the mail theft problem and the problem that the postal police officers have with doing their job. So we're going to have him on in just a second. That being said, mail theft. It is an absolute scourge across our country right now. It's becoming to the point. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and the main post office over in Hoover, which I use, the main post office, they actually came out with a notification saying, hey, don't use the blue drop-off boxes outside because thieves are stealing every piece of mail that's in there. And it's like that across the country. You can buy the arrow keys, the keys that open up the boxes. You can buy those on the dark web for a couple of grand, sometimes a hell of a lot cheaper than that. And let's be honest, there's a lot of valuable content that can be found in stolen mail. You can get credit cards, you can get checks. There's a lot of check fraud going on right now. There's a lot of personal information that's on there. You can do a lot of damage if you're a thief and stealing the mail. And right now, there's very little consequence whatsoever for those individuals who are stealing the mail. So when we come back, we're going to talk with Frank Albergo, the national president of the Postal Police Officers Association, when we come back. So today, my guest is Frank Albergo. He is the president of the U.S. Postal Police Officers Association. Frank, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, I just got one question for you. Is it safe for me to drop my mail in one of those blue post office boxes that sit on the corners of the streets?
Well, in certain areas, no, it's not.
Okay.
I think overall, the mail system is safe.
Right.
But I think there are pockets where mail theft is completely out of control. It's triggered by check fraud. They're robbing letter carriers on a daily basis. I mean, every day another letter carrier is robbed, but it's in certain areas: Houston, Washington D.C., New York,
right,
Chicago. So there are certain areas. Ohio, Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland.
Well, I'm in Birmingham. I'm in Birmingham, but it's happening here in Birmingham.
Right. So what tends to happen is it starts off slowly. There's a lack of response by law enforcement. It's not because they aren't trying. It's just that they don't have the resources, and then it just gradually gets worse and worse and worse, and crime is contagious.
Right.
So once the criminals see how, basically how easy this is and how lucrative it is, it's a free for all. I mean, so in Alabama, I don't think it's that bad just yet, but it'll get there. I mean, it's just going to spread all over. It's spreading like wildfire. It's amazing.
Well, and so you and I are both on LinkedIn, and I saw your post on LinkedIn talking about all the mail theft. Of course, I follow David Mayman. He talks about all the check fraud that's going on, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the two are absolutely interconnected there. Let me ask you this. You said, because I want to dive into some of this stuff, but you said that it's only happening in certain pockets right now. Why is that it's happening in some places like Houston, like Birmingham, like Chicago, but it's not happening in these other areas?
Give it time. Why? I mean, I'd like to blame it completely on the pullback of postal police. I think that's a contributing factor, but I think also there are other factors. Why it's happening in these certain areas? Well, I'm assuming because no one was arrested. So, the word is spreading
Right.
that, hey, this guy in Houston just robbed a letter carrier and he's selling all these checks and he's making, $100,000, every month.
Right.
On the, why aren't I taking part in this? So I think, I think if you look at, the standard economic model of crime assumes criminal incentives are basically dependent on four factors. So how, what's the expected payoff?
Right.
So mail theft is really lucrative. What's the penalty if I get caught? And right now, arrests are down. Prosecutions are down. Big time. I mean, we're talking about 49%. Inspection service arrests down 49% for mail theft since 2018. What are the chances of me getting caught? Right. So the chances aren't that great.
No, they're not good.
And then it's just attitudes towards risk. And right now, you check every box because it's just way too easy. And, and then the inspection service, it's incredible, announces that its postal police officers are powerless to arrest mail thieves. So they're almost incentivizing the theft and, and the attacks on letter carriers. It's if you can make sense of that,
Well, no, I can't. I agree with you. It's unfortunately, I do have some experience in that field, not on the legal side. I've done porch piracy. I've popped boxes open, got the mail out, things like that. And from that perspective, you're absolutely right. It's extremely easy to commit that type of crime. And it's kind of like a lottery. When you do something like that, you're not quite sure what type of goodies you're going to get as a criminal. You're going to get some PII. You may get some credit cards. You're looking for checks. You're looking for anything of value. And as you know, there's a lot of value to be found in the mail. And there's not a whole lot of security to be found around the mail. You've got, I've popped boxes at apartment buildings. I've never done the blue boxes, but I certainly knew where to get the keys if I wanted to. So you're absolutely right. The consequences are simply not there. You take the mail and you typically don't have to worry about anyone following up or arresting you. And, to your point, Telegram right now is really the Wild West of cybercrime and fraud overall. Most beginning and now experienced cybercriminals, they find their home on Telegram. And you can do just a keyword search of checks or check fraud, and you'll see dozens of channels pop up with checks stolen on a daily basis being sold to whoever wants to buy these things. You've got bank drops that are being sold as well, so you can cash them out. So it's a very easy crime to commit. What got me was you made the statement a second ago that postal police can't arrest these people.
Right. So, it's incredible. There's a long history with postal police officers. Right. So we were established in 1971, and admittedly, we were meant for facility security. We were protecting these large facilities. They're like miniature cities.
Sure.
But whenever there was a spike in crime, postal related crime, the inspection service would deploy postal police officers to targeted areas. And lo and behold, it worked. It's not surprising that police officers deter crime. So you could point to 1974 in the semi-annual report to Congress by the Inspection Service. They mention PPOs being deployed. There was a 60% decrease in postal-related crime once we were deployed. In 1993, there was another report that postal police were deployed in New York, and they saw a 50% decrease in assaults on letter carriers. In Washington, D.C. in the late 90s, again, there was a spike in postal-related crime. We were deployed. So then in the mid-2000s, the inspection service decided, well, it's kind of silly having all these police officers guarding entrances, employee entrances and truck entrances at these large facilities. We could bring in security, and then we could increase the mobility of postal police officers. So, and that's exactly what they did. They even had a cool name, the Postal Police Transformation Initiative.
Okay.
And we were out in the streets, and we were doing our jobs. Then what happened was we wanted more money, obviously.
Obviously, because you're doing more work.
Right. So we're doing more police work. We're out in the streets. We're making arrests. So, the way wages are set with the Postal Service, it's based on the private sector. So, if you're a letter carrier, that's not much of a problem. There's UPS drivers, there's FedEx drivers. But for police officers, it's difficult. I mean, where are these private sector police officers? Well, railroads have private sector police officers, some universities. So we were comparing ourselves with those police officers, and the Postal Service was comparing us to armed security guards. And what happened was an arbitrator said, well, they're obviously police officers, based on carrier protection patrols, mail theft prevention patrols, these off-property functions. And he gave us a grade increase. The arbitrator gave us a grade increase. It wasn't that much money. It was $1,700. I mean, we're not talking, we're not rich now. And the Postal Service responded by saying, well, then you're not doing those functions anymore. So they reinterpreted the law. So if you ask the Postal Service, it's misleading. They say, well, by law, their jurisdiction, the Postal Police jurisdiction is restricted to postal real property. Well, that's only true insofar as they interpret the law. They can interpret the law any way they want. So but right now, technically, we do not have arrest authority away from postal property because the Postal Service decided to interpret the law that way during a mail theft epidemic. I mean,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's crazy, right? I mean, most law enforcement agencies would say, okay, let's deploy our highly trained, specialized police force to the troubled hotspots, and let's do everything we can to stop this. And the inspection service has actually done the opposite. And then they went so far to say, well, postal police officers can't stop mail theft. It's just amazing. I mean, how did they arrive at that conclusion? It's incredible.
Right. So it's boiled down to money. As everything does, it boils down to money. They would rather save the money than go out there and protect the workers, protect the customers that are using the mail service, put the bad guys off the street, everything else. It's all about saving money.
Well, I think that's half of the story. The other half of the story, which actually does come down to money, they were going to close a lot of our field offices. Okay. So to close a field office, you have to show that it's not really cost effective to have these police officers, postal police officers. So if we're out in the streets stopping mail theft and protecting letter carriers, you can't replace us with armed guards. So what they did was they brought us back into the facilities and then hired a private contractor to make a recommendation to close 15 of our field offices based on these more restricted duties. So that was another, that was another part of it. I mean, It was just an all-out attack on us.
So how many field offices are there right now?
Right now, there's 21.
21 across 50 states.
Right. They were going, in the major metropolitan areas, New York, Newark, Miami, Washington, D.C., Chicago, L.A., Oakland, San Fran. So they were going to close all those. And, they thought twice about that. Even the inspection service thought twice about that. And they said, well, what's the optics of eliminating police positions in the middle of a crime wave isn't, the smartest thing to do. So we're going to hold off on that. I mean, this is what they told us. They said, oh, we're going to hold off on that. But they didn't say they're not going to do it. They just said, well, it's premature to make a decision at this point. So this is what happened. I mean, it's hard to believe. And the problem I have, but so I don't think this was, well, I know, we have a chief postal inspector. They reached, so I would get ready for this. So as we were approaching to the interest arbitration, so you reach, it's collective bargaining, you reach impasse, we can't strike. So you go to interest arbitration. And so we asked them, because we wanted to, put it aside, what's our jurisdictional authority? And they first said, we don't know. This is a law enforcement agency that they didn't know. They had no idea. And that we called it, in the union, we called it the jurisdictional authority conundrum, that they were in this conundrum that they didn't even know what their uniformed police officer's jurisdiction was. And then at the hearing,
we don't know what you're supposed to do. Right. We don't know where you're supposed to do it. Right. We're going to downsize you, but hey, it don't look good to downsize you right now. So.
I mean, it was amazing. But the problem I have, so then they the inspection service reached out to Postal Legal, and Postal Legal said, oh, no, well, they don't have it. We decided they don't have it. And then in the summer of 2020, they put out a memo, basically. They did this by an internal memo, and they said, okay, Postal Police can no longer be utilized to stop mail theft and to protect letter carriers.
So right as this stuff is going on.
Right. As the spike is happening. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I don't know what other reaction.
I mean, you laugh or cry. I mean, I'm chuckling some too, because it's insane.
Right. So as crime is, postal related crime is escalating, they're taking postal police officers off the streets. I mean, it's nuts. It actually is nuts.
It is. Let me ask you something. And so I did this stuff when I popped boxes, and I won't say pop. When I stole mail, this was, right now, 2023. This was back in 2006, 2007, 2005, 2006. We were not violent at that point in time. We would just pop a box, take the mail, and leave. But I have seen instances recently in the news where violence has occurred when it comes to stealing the mail, that they're actually, robbing the mail trucks that deliver the mail. Is that actually going on right now?
So to give you a little background, so what was happening in around 2017, 2018, criminals were phishing mail out of the blue collection boxes.
Sure.
So that's just, it's just, usually it's a rat trap, and they connect the string to it, and they actually go fishing for mail, and they pull out letters. And you got some letters, you didn't get all the mail. It's time consuming.
Right.
So the Postal Service decided, well, let's make these boxes tamper-proof. Let's make these blue collection boxes tamper-proof. So if you remember, that it used to have that chute that you would pull down, and it was this big wide gap. Right. So they decided, we'll get rid of those. We'll retrofit all the blue collection boxes, which is a slot. And then there's an anti-phishing device in the slot, so it's even more difficult to pull it out. So that had the negative consequence of now, because it's so lucrative stealing mail and, selling the checks and stealing identity. So the criminals decided, well, mailbox phishing really, it's too time consuming. Now it's really hard. We're not getting much mail. So let's rob the letter carriers of these arrow keys. So, it's not a secret that keys open locks.
Right.
So they said, let's rob letter carriers. So they started sticking guns in a letter carrier's face, and they robbed the arrow keys. They're called arrow keys, and they give access not only to the blue collection boxes, but all the cluster boxes, all the apartment panels. In the big cities, they're relay boxes, these green relay boxes. Gives access to those green relay boxes where there are a ton of mail. So it actually made it worse. And so I'm gonna get this. So as they are hardening these blue collection boxes, they're also taking postal police off the street. So that was happening concurrently. So I mean, it was just like a perfect storm. Meanwhile, we have the opioid epidemic.
Right.
So and that played a big part also because, the inspection service only has, a certain number of postal inspectors, and Congress was really pressuring the inspection service to, get these, fentanyl out of the mail stream. So the inspection service was pivoting towards, narcotics interdiction. So that led to, fewer mail theft arrests. I mean, if you look at their narcotics arrests, it's way up.
Right.
And postal inspectors, they're great criminal investigators. They much prefer, investigating mail fraud, narcotics, because it's more interesting. Right. I mean, sitting on a blue collection box, waiting for, some kid to come by to, open it up with the key, isn't really that interesting. Postal police would love to be doing that.
Right.
But a postal inspector, it's kind of a waste of their time. I mean, it's kind of like having an FBI agent, giving out parking tickets. I mean, it's just, or maybe, sitting there with a radar gun, giving out speeding tickets. It just doesn't make sense. So that's what happened. So you had the inspection service pivoting from mail theft and the protection of letter carriers, protection of the mail, pivoting to narcotics. You had the hardening of the blue collection boxes. You had Telegram, which now there's like this loose network of criminals where they I mean, it's not a conspiracy. It's right. It catches on, and it's it's evolved. So they're figuring out better ways to do this just by trial and error, like, evolution. And so it's completely spiraled out of control. I mean, it's frustrating from our perspective because, we know we could do the job. I mean, we have done
I know you can. I absolutely know you can. And I got to be honest. I mean, catching people who send fentanyl through the mail is not rocket science. It's really not. They've got to have it delivered someplace, and they've got to order it from someplace, and then it comes through the mail system. It's not rockets. Right. It's not a difficult catch to do that. It's catching somebody out of blue box, though. It may take a little bit more police work to do something like that. And as you say, the news is not nearly as big compared to a fentanyl case. You get a couple ounces of fentanyl could kill a few thousand people, so that's big in the news. Meanwhile, somebody's stealing checks out of a box, not as big. So that's unfortunate. Let me, do you think that the people that are in charge care about the mail theft that's going on?
Yes, they do. I mean, the Postal Service, the Postal Service, because it's so huge and it's so, there's different departments. Mm-hmm. And so you have labor relations. Does labor relations really care about mail theft? No, they care about suppressing wages. The inspection service obviously cares about mail theft, but they have limited resources. The thing I don't understand is, so if the Postal Service, came up with this brilliant idea that postal police can no longer, arrest mail thieves, why didn't the inspection service push back a little bit?
I agree.
I mean, why didn't they say, well, we need to use them? In fact, so the way the inspection service is situated, there's divisions, and each division is run by what's called an inspector in charge, an INC. So those are the people on the ground, right? Those are the people who are running, local operations.
Right.
Those INCs want PPOs. I mean, this is, the inspection services legal counsel has said this. Yes, and INCs want to use PPOs. They know are effective, but they can't. So you would think that the leadership in DC would say, well, since the people on the ground want to use postal police officers, it might be a good idea to actually listen to them and allow the INCs to use PPOs.
Right.
But it just hasn't happened. And this is, now it's going on, nearly 3 years. So, and
it's not slowing down. I mean, the mail theft is absolutely not slowing down.
It's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. I mean, and it's just the government, I mean, they just can't get out of their own way.
Right.
I mean, they literally said to Congress during a field hearing, during a congressional field hearing, that even if the jurisdictional authority of postal police officers were restored, we still won't use them. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, really.
You can give them back the jurisdiction. You can give them back all the power. We ain't going to use them.
And then they said, which is amazing. I mean, they can't, they can't get their story straight. Then they said, well, the reason is because if we take them out of their facilities, the facilities would be at risk. But those are the same facilities that you already slotted for elimination, right? If you remember what I said, so that doesn't make any sense. So they're whatever they say is incoherent, and it's interesting. They don't necessarily lie. So what they do is they just provide misleading information. Right. So they think not being caught in a lie is the same as telling the truth, and it's not. So they'll say postal police officers, their compliments haven't changed. Well, there's the onboard compliment and there's the authorized compliment. The authorized compliment hasn't changed. That's true. But the number of PPOs that actually exist has drastically changed. It's down nearly a third since the beginning of fiscal year 2020.
So give me the numbers. Give me the numbers about what they were compared to what they are now.
So, back in the 70s, there were 2,700 of us.
Okay.
Then they went through, this transformation plan, and there was about 800 of us. And now there's maybe 420, and that includes, bargaining unit PPOs, so rank and file postal police officers, and then there are about 80 or so, sergeants, lieutenants, captains. So altogether, there's about 425, I'd say.
Okay.
Which is not a lot, obviously.
No, I mean, it's not a lot, and and I wanted you to tell those numbers because there seems to be a disconnect between the populace, the public that's out there, and their perception of law enforcement and the actual troops that are on the ground. The numbers almost across the board, but it's even worse with the postal police officers. Law enforcement numbers are not very high. It's not like we're a police nation, as some people like to say. I mean, you've got 425 postal police officers. That's not a whole hell of a lot, and it's not really a whole hell of a lot of money. As you said, you guys are not rich.
Right. So I mean, if you look at policing in every other country in Europe, you normally would have more police officers than prisoners.
Right.
That's the way it works. It's more cost effective to prevent crime. But America is different. We actually have more prisoners than police officers. So it seems like we have a broken model of policing and law enforcement, where we actually allow the crime to happen, and then we arrest people, throw them in jail, destroy their families, destroy the community. It's just a broken model. A lot of crime is crime of opportunity. I mean, if there are police out in the street, it just won't happen.
I mean, you're right.
I'm not saying anything that's like earth shattering. I mean, pretty common sense. But in the inspection service, if you look at their mission statement, it's to protect the postal service, the infrastructure, employees, the public trust in the mail. It's not necessarily investigations. And they right now have about 1,250 postal inspectors and basically 425 postal police officers. It's backwards. I mean, they should have more, obviously I'm the president of the union, so I'm saying this, but I mean, just look at most police departments with a protective function, with a crime prevention function. They have more uniformed police.
Right.
And the inspection service, it's the opposite. It's backwards. Not only that, the inspection service is not the lead on mail theft. Is not the lead on mail fraud. That's the FBI. It's not the lead on identity theft. That's the Secret Service. They're not the lead on narcotics. That's the DEA. So what are they the lead on? Well, mail theft and protecting employees.
Right.
And that right now is on the back burner. I mean, they're making right now they're reacting, but if you see how they're reacting, they're relying on local police they call it the force multiplier, that they're going to partner with local police. Well, local police, and you mentioned this, they're short staffed. So I mean, they have other things to worry about than mail theft.
That's exactly right.
Right. So I mean, if you look at a story out of Chicago, I mean, it's really incredible. A story out of Chicago, they have mail thieves renting U-Haul trucks. I mean, you're not scared of being chased if you have if your getaway vehicle is a U-Haul truck. They're wearing the other one that was funny is there's a guy who's wearing fuzzy slippers and red pajamas.
I saw that.
Right. He's robbing letter carriers in his slippers. I mean, he rolls out of bed and says to himself, I haven't robbed a letter carrier in like 2 days.
I need a check.
Let me go. He puts on his slippers. I mean, it's incredible. They're not scared. They're riding bicycles.
Right.
They're riding scooters. I mean, it's completely out of control. And then, when the media asks the inspection service, well, what are you doing? It's just platitude after platitude. It's we take this very seriously. We are partnering with our law enforcement, local law enforcement. We're doing everything we can. But, and then they say in the next sentence, they say, by law, the jurisdictional authority of postal police officers is restricted to postal property. Well, then everything you just said was just like wiped away because nobody's going to take that seriously.
Right.
Like you're not doing everything you can if you have a uniformed police force and they're sitting in postal facilities guarding buildings, not the mail or, postal employees.
I agree. You mentioned you mentioned a crime of opportunity, and this, just to give, because you and I know where this is going, but some of the listeners and viewers may not know where this is going. So I kind of wanted to walk through that. My perception, and tell me if I'm wrong. My perception. So I started off, I was a cyber criminal, fraudster, scammer, despicable individual. Did the porch piracy, went from porch piracy to hitting apartment buildings for their boxes, things like that, stealing mail out of people's home mailboxes, things like that as well. That's where it started for me. But what I'm seeing right now is because of things like Telegram and the way the internet has evolved in those criminal spaces, I'm seeing an evolution that is, it's extraordinary how sophisticated this crime is. Sophisticated and not. So you think about it, somebody goes and you said U-Hauls. Just think about the profit. I don't want people out here listening to think about the profit potential that's there. All right. So you've got a U-Haul that's full of mail that's been stolen out of the blue boxes, apartment buildings, all the little remote boxes, everything else along the way. How many credit cards are in there? A ton. Now, how much are those credit cards going for? Well, first of all, as a criminal, I know that those credit cards are valid. They're not only valid, they're local to me, which makes them even more valuable. So if a credit card has, say, a $5,000 available balance on that, how much can I sell that for as a criminal? I can easily get $300-$400 out of that. All right. That's just the cards that are there. The checks that are there. Again, those checks are good checks. I know that they're good. There's government checks. There's payroll checks. There's all these other benefit checks. There's checks maybe for birthdays, any number of things that are out there in the mail. All right. those checks are expected to be cashed. So how much can I sell those checks for? Maybe not as much as the credit cards, but take a check that's maybe got $5,000 on it. How much can I get out of that? Well, I can easily get $100, $200 out of that. And why would I want to sell it? Well, why I want to sell it is because I don't have to worry about setting up the bank account to cash it out. Now, the thing is, you think that setting up the bank account may be difficult. No, it's not, because banks have not seen check fraud like that in a long time. But now they're seeing this surge of it all of a sudden. Add in remote deposit with that as well. So now you've got a bank account that's fairly easy to set up. You can deposit the check remotely so that you don't have to show your face to a teller anyplace, and you immediately get access to those funds. So those checks, say $5,000, you're going to get $200 out of those, maybe a little bit more out of those, each one. That doesn't count the PII that's in that mail as well. Any type of personal identifying information, socials, dates of birth, any number of things like that. Maybe the property transfers that are coming through, all the data that's coming through on that. Because these days, the most important, most valuable thing on the planet is information, and the mail is all about information. Now, that's just the value. Think about the network that's out there. Telegram networks criminals together. And I'm going to let you talk in a minute, Frank. I don't mean to be
go.
Talking here. All right.
To be honest, I don't know much about the actual, like how the fraud actually occurs. So, I'm more of an expert on mail theft. And how do you prevent mail theft? But this is, this is all true.
So what Telegram does, Telegram networks criminals together. And to give you an idea about the numbers of criminals, we already know the law enforcement numbers are not very big. Take the FBI, for example. FBI has 37,000 field agents across 56 field offices. Of those 37,000 agents, only about 200 concentrate on cybercrime. So you've not got a whole hell of a lot of agents that are looking at cybercrime. All right. Now, on the criminal side, when I ran Shadow Crew 2004, we ended with 4,000 members. Fast forward to 2017, largest criminal network, Alpha Bay, ends with 240,000 members. 2 more years later, 2019, Black Market, just a dark web marketplace, 1.15 million members. All of that pre-pandemic. What happened during the pandemic? Numbers exploded. The government had stimulus programs in place with absolutely no security in place for at least 6 months. Those fraud numbers exploded. Now you've got single communities that are millions of members large, all of them looking for ways to make money. And you were right, Frank. It's a crime of opportunity. You look for the easiest access that gives the largest return on the investment. And right now there's no easier access than stealing the mail, because there's no consequence whatsoever in place. Telegram allows all of these criminals to network together. So that person that's in Houston, that's in Chicago, that's in Birmingham, that's stealing that mail, what he can do is he can open up a little Telegram channel. It takes like 5 minutes to do that. He can start posting pictures of the checks and the credit cards that he's stolen. It takes him another 10 minutes to do that. Puts the prices attached to him and everything else, and then people come to him. It's like a field of dreams for criminal activity. If you build it, they will come, and they are coming. Add into that, because again, we're talking about crime of opportunity. We've got an economy right now that's going to shit. A lot of people who would never commit crime are now thinking about it. So you've not only got the organized criminals that are out there, but now you've got people that have pressure on them, that are worried about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to make the mortgage, how they're going to pay for a dozen eggs that are $7 a dozen right now.
Right.
So all that together means that these crime numbers are going to explode. Meanwhile, what's happening is the people that are in charge over at the post office are saying, hey, you postal police officers, we're going to lower you down, but we're not going to do it while everybody's looking. You don't have any jurisdiction. You don't have any control of anything whatsoever. Now, what do you think? And this is because, Frank, you know the answer to this, but for the viewers out there, what do you think? How do you think that this story ends? Does it end with the criminals just saying, we're tired of this crime, we're just going to not do it anymore? No, it doesn't end with that. What it ends with is an increased number of the crime and the criminals happening and taking place. And it's going to continue until something's done. So I would ask, Frank, what the hell needs to be done?
Well, I don't, at this point, there's no silver bullet. I mean, it's rampant. It's completely out of control. We spoke about Professor Maimon before. He has video footage of criminals actually, they're kind of doing like a risk analysis. They're like, well, I'm probably going to get caught. I mean, this is actually, he's like, I'm going to get caught. I'm taking all the risk. So you got to pay me. I want $200 per check,
Right.
or I want $2,000 for this arrow key. And I mean, so think about that. The criminal is actually saying, I'm probably going to go to jail, but I'm going to make so much money, and it's going to be cash. And I'm going to be able to hide it, and I'll go to jail for 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and I'll come out, and I might go back. I mean, committing this type of crime. So it's completely out of control. But
it is, and just to lend into that, so people can understand that as well. That risk analysis is 100% accurate. It's 100% accurate. If you're stealing $100,000 a month, stealing the mail, all right, which some of these guys are doing, they're profiting $100,000 plus a month, committing this mail theft, stealing checks, selling them, selling credit cards, things like that, $100K a month. All right. Now, they're not going to get caught their first month. They're probably not going to get caught their 8th or 9th month. So they're going to be in this stuff over a year. That's $1.2 million per year. All right. They get caught. How much time are they going to do? They're going to do 2 years at a minimum institution. Why do I know that? Because I served federal time. They're going to a federal prison camp. 2 years. Now, here's the thing. Of that 2 years, do they spend 2 years in prison? No, they don't. They only serve 10 months out of every 12 months. So that's 20 months they have to serve. Guess what? They don't have to serve 20 months because they also go to a halfway house. They get 6 months halfway house time. So they get out after 14 months. And then what do? They continue to break the law from the halfway house. So 14 months, and their paycheck is $1.2 million at least. Is that a crime? That's not bad. Is that something that people would that I would do? Yes. It's something that most criminals would do because you do that risk analysis. The consequences, if there are any, are not high enough to deter anyone from this type of crime.
So that's the first thing I would do. You need stiffer penalties for mail theft and attacking letter carriers. There's a bill in Congress right now. Congressman Calvert out of California, he introduced a bill. So that's the first thing. Second, obviously, you have to get Postal Police out on the street, and you have to advertise it. You have to say, instead of saying, "Oh, Postal Police can't arrest you," I mean, you have to say, "Listen, we have a police force. They specialize in mail theft prevention and the protection of postal workers. And if you steal mail or if you threaten a letter carrier, they will find you, they will arrest you, and we will prosecute you."
I mean, that's a good point that you make. If you don't tell people that they're there, how the hell are they going to know? If you don't tell people what the consequences are, how are they going to know? They're not going to know, and they're going to continue that behavior. You're absolutely right.
Sure. So, I mean, you also need more Postal Police officers. I mean, the staffing ratios of the inspection service, to me, are backwards. I'm not saying you just get rid of postal inspectors. I mean, you need postal inspectors. But at this point, you need Postal Police, if not as much, more. So, let's fix the staffing ratios in the inspection service. And then, the arrow keys. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's a key. It's like, I don't know, we're in the 21st century. There's all these electronic devices that we could use that you could track if it's stolen, that you could deactivate. You could actually monitor intrusion events at each box.
You could.
Right. I mean, and so let's do that. I mean, but they're not doing it. They
which is crazy. I mean, and you're right. I mean, you said it. I know this is the 21st century. I think we might have some tech that could fix this.
So why aren't they? I mean, it's the Postal Service and everything. Everything is, it's glacier speed. I know they have done some pilot programs, but whether or not they were successful.
Right.
So, I mean, all of this needs to be addressed. I think also they have to look at, there's internal mail theft as well. So the inspection service handles external mail theft. The Inspector General handles internal mail theft.
Right.
And right now what they have is you have your career postal employees. Career postal employees are unlikely to steal mail.
Right. They've got
because
too much to lose.
they're not going to threaten. They don't want to lose their pensions.
Right.
They're vested in the postal service. But now they have a non-career workforce. They have like 100,000 non-career employees who, the turnover rate, I think it's over 30%. It's so those are the people who are stealing mail internally.
I mean, you're right. I mean, that's potentially 100,000 insiders,
right?
That you can rely on.
And they like rent their keys out. I mean, imagine that. So you're a criminal and you want a key. Can I take your key? Yeah, I want $200. And they rent it, and the carrier gets the key back and they turn it in, so no one's the wiser.
Right.
So I mean, they have to really look at this non-career workforce. I mean, is it really a great idea? I mean, there are better ways.
You're right.
I mean, right. There are better ways to reduce labor costs than hiring, part-time employees that require more supervision, that increase absenteeism, that require more policing. So they should look at that.
Well, and it boils down. I mean, and I want to get to that in just a second, but I'm not sure that, again, for the listeners and the viewers, insiders right now in different verticals are eating organizations alive. Talking about mail, not just the U.S. Postal Service, but FedEx, UPS. You can go on Telegram and you see insiders that are advertised consistently about, hey, I can make sure that, you order, that's $5,000 desktop computer. I can make sure I've got an insider at the shipping company. I can make sure that it gets lost forever so that you get to keep it and you get your money back, or you get a different one, and things like that. So you've got the insiders that are there. You've absolutely got the insiders that are with the USPS. You absolutely have that. And you're absolutely right. That renting the keys, that's really popular. And you think about it, you've got the mail carrier that's there, that insider that's there. They see every piece of mail that's coming through. How hard is it for them to just take some of it? How hard is it for them to partner up with someone and say, hey, hook us up with Telegram, we're going to make a lot of money? And they do. They do make a lot of money. And you're right. To me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that these 100,000 non-career employees, that's just an attempt to save money, but it makes us far less secure in the long run.
Right. I mean, absolutely. It's listen, I mean, a career postal employee, I'd like to see that would be a good inspector general audit to see, of everyone that's being arrested, how many are career employees, how many are non-career employees.
Very few career. It has to be very few.
Right. I mean, it also, I mean, I've heard of gang members infiltrating the Postal Service just to further their narcotics business. So it's, I mean, and then the background investigations that are done on non-career employees, I mean, it's not great. So, I mean, so that's a problem. But I think generally, for the most part, I think the mail theft problem is external. I think most of it is external. But I mean, it's definitely.
But I mean, that lends to it. It does. I agree with you that the 90% of the problem is external. It's the people that are it's the guy with the fuzzy slippers, the guys on the scooters, or the more organized guys that are actually, they know the profit and they're renting the U-Hauls because they understand, hey, we just can't put this stuff in our little Honda Accord. We're going to get so much mail, we need a U-Haul for this. And think about this out there, the people that are listening. They're stealing so much mail on that daily basis that they need a U-Haul to put it in. And guess what? That's not just one guy that's going through all that mail. He's got a team of people that separate the mail, like in a mail room. They separate the mail for what's, the spam mail, the credit cards, the checks, everything else. And they process it like that. So they've actually got processing mail rooms themselves on the criminal side to do this kind of stuff. I don't think a lot of people really understand how organized these types of crimes are right now. And the internet, Telegram specifically, helps lend to that organization. It networks these criminals together, and they all work together to profit, to victimize the Postal Service, the customers, the employers, the government, everything else across the board. Let me ask you, the people that are listening and viewing right now, what can they do to try to get this problem fixed?
Well, definitely, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So
Right.
you got to call your member of Congress and complain, and just say that this is outrageous. Especially if you live in a area where mail theft is running rampant. Um, Say, where are the postal police? Why aren't postal police out on the streets? Why aren't more arrests being made? Um, you know, this has to be addressed. The problem. Get ready for this. The problem is that the postal service is, for the most part, self-funded.
Right.
So Congress really has little say over what happens in the postal service because they can't withhold funds. I mean, the carrot and stick doesn't work with the postal service as far as Congress is concerned. The only way they can really influence the postal service is by passing legislation.
Right.
So so think about that. Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress has a little say over the postal service. It's amazing. I mean, the Board of Governors, that's another thing you could do. Write the Board of Governors at the Postal Service. They could restore postal police jurisdiction right now. I mean, it's at their discretion.
So you think that's a better immediate idea is to write them first?
I think, yes, I think you could actually call in. They have these open sessions, the Board of Governors, and you could call in.
I'll have the links for all that in the show notes as well, so people can do that.
You could actually call in and say, mail theft is out of control. Where are the postal police? What is the inspection service doing? What is the postal service doing? Why do we still use arrow keys? We need to get rid of these arrow keys. Another problem with the arrow key is that it can be counterfeit.
Right. So right. It's not difficult.
Right. Even if you recover the arrow keys, how many copies were made?
Right.
And then what they've found is even if you replace the locks on the let's say blue collection boxes or the apartment panels, well then they just rob another letter carrier. I mean that's the workaround at this point
because there's no consequence.
Right. So they have to upgrade it. The whole thing is a mess right now.
It is, and
it's a shame because the inspection service really does have a great history of it's possibly the oldest law enforcement agency in America. And I'm a postal inspection service employee. I don't like bashing them on the news. It's not what I want to be doing. Right. But at this point, I have no choice because I want to be bureaucracy.
And I want to be fair too. I mean, with the postal inspectors, when I was running Shadow Crew, one of the law enforcement agencies that we worried about was the postal inspectors. I mean, it was because they had a name back then of being, by God, they were ruthless. You don't want them on your ass. That was the name.
Well, I mean, right now, if you're a drug dealer, I think that's true. I mean, you don't want the inspection service after you because they're going to get you.
I agree.
Mail theft, which is odd because they have other agencies that deal with that. But mail theft right now, clearly nobody's really scared of the inspection service, especially. And here's the other problem: when they announced that postal police have no jurisdiction to arrest mail thieves, do criminals differentiate postal police from the inspection service on whole? No, they don't. No. So they're basically saying, we can't stop you. We're not going to arrest you. So mail thieves are like, wow, the inspection service, they don't, oh, great. Right. Let me go out in my fuzzy slippers and rob a letter carrier.
I mean that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
So, the inspection service has to, they have to start messaging better. I mean, this message that they put out that postal police can't arrest mail thieves it's insane. It's actually insane. And they're destroying their brand. That's the other thing. The postal brand is destroyed. I mean, it's, the Inspector General, it was over I think it was $3 billion. That business they wouldn't realize if they weren't the Postal Service. I mean, how much of that has been lost?
Right.
Because of the mail theft epidemic. People, right now, are people comfortable sending checks through the mail? I mean, I wouldn't be. The two groups who were hurt the most were the elderly and small businesses. Well, that's who sends checks through the mail.
Right.
So it's like they got hit twice. I mean, once by the pandemic and once by the mail theft epidemic. So it's it needs to be solved.
Let me ask you, Frank, and don't pull any punches here. Do you think we're going to get there or not?
I don't know.
I don't either. Honestly, I don't either.
I mean, Washington D.C. is like dysfunctional as far as I could tell. Hopefully, I know. I'm not one of these maniacs who thinks, people get into politics just for selfish reasons. I think most politicians are getting into Congress because they want to help. And, as more and more people are complaining, as we have more and more victims, maybe something will be done. There's going to be a GAO audit of the Postal Police Officer position. I'm hoping that the GAO makes some recommendations. I hope common sense prevails here. And,
right.
The GAO says, well, you have a uniformed police force. You've hired them. You've equipped them. Yeah. You identified them to the American public as police officers. You train them to stop mail theft. You train them to let's use them. I mean, I didn't mention they gave us equipment. They gave us, this is amazing. Only the government would do this. They gave us intelligence-led policing equipment where we could track mail theft. We could track, the carrier routes that were most vulnerable to attacks, and we could locate them in real time. And they were equipping our law enforcement vehicles with this, intelligence-led policing equipment. And then they restricted our jurisdictional authority. And I said, well, then why'd you equip us with this? If we didn't have the jurisdiction, which we obviously had, come on. Why did you equip us? And they actually, when they scratched their heads and they're like, it's a good point.
I can see it. So some guy in an office is like, yeah, give them all the equipment they need and don't let them use it.
Right. And then, now they just stripped it out of the vehicles. So they took it out of the vehicles.
So they spent however much money that was. They got the budget for it. So they spent it and then they took it away.
Right. It's amazing. Right. It's incredible.
Frank, just so the viewers know, I started to see your post on LinkedIn, and I reached out to you because what I was seeing, I mean, you were just putting it out there. This is happening, and it was on a daily basis, sometimes multiple posts a day about mail theft in different areas across the United States. And I don't think a lot of people really appreciate how bad of a problem this is. And I saw you posting that, and you certainly understood that. And I just want to thank you for the job that you're doing and that you continue to do. And I understand that it's probably feels like a lot of banging your head up against the wall sometimes.
Yes,
but it's absolutely appreciated by not only me, but I know a ton of people that are out there that are really thankful and grateful for you raising awareness like this. And I just want to thank you for the job that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. It's just very frustrating. I mean, also Professor Maimon from GSU, he has been out there and really been, banging the drum on this as well. It's catching on. The media is catching on now. That there are more and more stories on mail theft, and they mention Postal Police, but it's the problem is just going to get worse. And quite frankly, it's spreading like wildfire, and the Postal Service is actually fanning the flames by not reacting properly.
Well, by advertising, hey, they have no jurisdiction, they can't arrest you.
It really, to me, that is the most incredible part. You put that with the fact that there are fewer arrests, that the prosecutions are down. I mean, what would you expect to happen?
Right.
But this is exactly what you would expect to happen. And they got it. They certainly didn't ask for it, but they got it now. And so now they have to deal with it, and they're not reacting quick enough.
They're not. When I was, I don't like to I don't really like to talk a lot about my criminal past because I don't want people to think I'm bragging about it. But to give people an idea about how long it takes the government to react to fraud, I'm the guy that created this thing called tax return identity theft. Stealing, filing tax returns first for dead people, then stealing people's W-2s, filing returns. Now, I started that crime back in 2002, 2003. The IRS did not really put any effective mitigation practices into place, any security in place. They didn't really do anything about that until 2011. That's when criminals first started to notice that something was being done. All right. And right now we're right in the infancy of this mail theft that's going on. And I just pray to God that it's not going to take 9 years for them to do something effective against that.
I mean, the other problem, it's, the Postal Service is an American institution. I mean, we've seen, the January 6th attack. What happens when you don't protect American institutions? I mean, it's a disaster. People vote by mail. I don't think that mail theft calls into question the integrity of an election.
Right.
I personally don't think that, but will Americans think that?
Sure they will.
I'm sure they will, right? I mean, they'll actually say, "Oh, this is a fraud. The election is nonsense." I mean, do we really want that? No, of course not. So, let's fix this. It's frustrating because, I mean, as you mentioned, they don't react quick enough. So the inspection service has not only not reacted quick enough, their reaction has been completely wrong. I mean, completely wrong. I mean, you're pulling postal police off the street during a mail theft epidemic. I mean, just that sentence alone says there's something wrong, right? That obviously there's something wrong and something needs to be corrected.
I agree. Frank Albergo, president of the U.S. Postal Police Officers Association. My friend, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Let me ask you this. If anyone wants to reach out and contact you, how can they contact you?
LinkedIn.
That's what I was going to say too.
Right. LinkedIn is my platform. You should definitely, you can follow me on LinkedIn, message me. It's, I'd love to hear from people, to be honest. I mean, it's sad, it really is sad what's happening. It's, I don't know. I'm at a loss of words at this point.
No, I agree. And Frank, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.